Let's bring him up. They wanted to see him. Oh, you want to say hi? Hi everyone, I'm ShadowWwitch and this is Mickey. Welcome to our circle. And today we're going to talk about the Wiccan family tree. A lot of people are practicing Wicca today and witchcraft, and it's important to understand the path that we are on and those that started our path. Well, it technically was started in the 1950s by Gerald Gardner in Great Britain. But it actually has its roots back in the late 1800s, early 1900s with Dr. Margaret Alice Murray. Yes! And Dr. Margaret Alice Murray was an Egyptologist and an archaeologist and a scientist, and she was a very smart lady. And she wrote a really big book called The Witch Cult of Western Europe. Oh, you read that one? And he gives full approval to that book. It's actually available online. I believe you can get a hold of it if you'd like. Well, the witch cult in Western Europe, here we go, little man. All right. Actually, started Gerald Gardner and a lot of other individuals in Great Britain studying what they believed to be ancient witchcraft and coven setups and organizations practicing. They felt that it went back a very long time. There's really no evidence of that. Dr. Murray used a lot of her personal beliefs to put together an understanding for her that the witch cults of Western Europe were a thing that went back generationally. There's no evidence that they did go back to the Druids or went back for thousands of years to Western Europe or to the Celts, which were a very large grouping of individuals that migrated from Eastern Europe all the way across to Western Europe over 1,000 years and encompassed many, many different cultures, many different groups from many different countries that we recognize today, as high up as Scandinavia, as farther down as the Mediterranean, and all the way over to Spain, Portugal, and of course, as people are familiar with the Celts, to Great Britain, which encompasses Scotland, Ireland, Wales, Cornwall, England. And after Gerald Gardner in 1939 first started practicing, he did start the concept or the tradition of Wicca, Gardnerian Wicca, in the 1950s. Shortly thereafter, he went to Parliament and had laws changed to allow people to practice freely without breaking the law. Afterwards, his high priestesses, Doreen Valiente, Patricia Crowther, and Eleanor Ray Bone, became very influential in the world of Wicca and witchcraft, some writing books, others running their own groups, and influencing and training others in this particular path. In the 1960s, we had Sybil Leek, Alex and Maxine Saunders, who started a group called the Alexandrian Tradition. I do believe it was Stuart Farah that coined the term Alexandrian Tradition. Stuart Farah married Janet Owen Farah, and they were instrumental in a tremendous way in our practice. They wrote the Witch's Bible, which I have here. Actually, it's a Witch's Bible, that if you don't have this on your bookshelf, you're missing out. Is the Complete Witch's Handbook. It is loaded with all kinds of wonderful history, tradition, rituals, rites. If you're looking for something, you'll find it in this book. I have one here. I have one at home. It's wonderful to have. Today, Janet is married to Gavin Bone, who I believe is a direct descendant of Eleanor Ray Bone. I believe it's her nephew. He's her nephew. And they are still writing books today, like Progressive Witchcraft and a number of other wonderful books that you can find today online. In the 1960s, we had Raymond Buckland come to the United States from Great Britain, and with him, he brought not only Gardnerian witchcraft, but then eventually Sex Wicca, which is S-E-A-X, which is a type of Saxony Wicca. Then Mr. Buckland moved into Romany Wicca, which is a really lovely style of magic. We had Victor, Henry, and Cora Anderson, which developed a style of fairy Wicca in California. And in the 1970s, we had Laurie Cavett, Raven Grimassi, Scott Cunningham. A lot of people aren't aware of the fact that Raven Grimassi was actually Scott Cunningham's teacher. And both wonderful authors, both very prolific writers, and they published many, 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 many books. Both, unfortunately, are gone, right? Have left us and are in the Summerland. We also have Susanna Budapest, who is very influential and started the Dianic movement, the feminist movement in the Wiccan tradition. After her, we have Starhawk, who started with the Gardnerian tradition and then started to mix it with the Dianic tradition. And she wrote the very famous and influential Spiral Dance. Her tradition was called Reclaiming, or is called Reclaiming. Margot Adler wrote Drawing Down the Moon. These are individuals. If you have not heard of them, you really need to know their names. Why? Yes, you can practice magic, you can do witchcraft without knowing these people, but so many people today are so fascinated. They must know about the Salem witch trials. They must know about the individuals that were put to death hundreds and hundreds of years ago on the charges of witchcraft, and they look so hard to find some type of relationship, some type of ancestry. Or those people weren't witches, not even a little. I believe there was one individual in Salem. He was a gentleman who was a fortune teller, and he read tarot cards, and by definition he could have been a legitimate witch by our terminology today. Other than him, the vast majority of people put to death throughout the ages were simply midwives, herb women, cunning men or women, people that were just doing folk magic, trying to keep their families healthy if they got sick, using simple everyday remedies. They were not bowing down to the new church's regulations and requirements, and they were targeted. The individuals I mentioned to you, from Gerald Gardner, Doreen Valiente, Patricia Crowther, Eleanor Ray Bone, Sybil Leek, Alex and Maxine Saunders, Stuart, Janet Farah, Gavin Bone, all the rest. These are true witches. These are the individuals that carved the path that we walk on today by writing the books that were first published before any other books were published. When I started practicing over 40 years ago, there were no books on witchcraft. I mean, Raymond Buckland had the big blue book of witchcraft, which we all called it. We did have a witch's Bible that was published, and pretty much that was it. Laurie Cavett came out with A Power of the Witch, which was her first book. Those were pretty much all you had access to until Starhawk wrote The Spiral Dance, Margot Adler wrote Drawing Down the Moon. That was it. There were not hundreds and hundreds and thousands of books on witchcraft like there are today. That was it. If you don't know these individuals who started our path, it's important that you do, because they were the ones that took a lot of grief, a lot of slack, a lot of hits for all of us. And they did not become famous and rich and you know, from writing these books by any means. They've become somewhat of a celebrity in our world, but you know, rich by no means. So look out for their books. Most of them are available online. Purchase them. Help support an author in the Wiccan tradition or the witchcraft tradition, and learn about those who started the path for everyone. And this has been ShadowWwitch, and thank you for visiting my circle.